Welcome back. We are live for another episode of Growing with My Fellow Growers. We are short, at least one panel member this week or two. Brandon Rust and Aaron the Grower will not be joining us. Send some good vibes out there to Aaron the Grower. He's up in the Northern California regions that have some fires going on. So good thoughts going out to Aaron the Grower, definitely. And we'll catch Brandon maybe next week. But first, I want to pass it to Spartan Grown. Welcome back.
Thanks, Jack. Happy to be here. Spartan Grown. I'm a organic grower at home here in Michigan. At work, I grow in synthetics. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word with no spaces. And if you don't do the social media, you can shoot me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com, and I'll do my best to answer your question.
Welcome back, and thank you for joining us. You can also be reached via email if you don't use social media at jackgreenstock47@gmail.com. So Spartan always reminds me of that. There are people out there that don't use social media, and props to you. Probably have a little bit better life for it in some respects. But that being said, there's positive sides of it. YouTube, I guess, being one of them, which are on right now. And I'm going to pass it over next to fellow YouTuber Mathew Gates.
Yeah, hey everyone. This is Mathew Gates. I'm an integrated pest management specialist. For those in the chat who don't know, though I'm seeing already that we have several people here that I definitely recognize, and I always appreciate that we have these interactions. Actually right now I am editing a video of me and Aaron that we had a couple of weeks ago, where we talked about insect vision and how you can sort of weaponize light and other EM radiation, for that matter, for your IPM needs for pest control and attraction, repellency, and all that sort of stuff. So if you're interested in that, subscribe to my YouTube channel, Zenthanol, the same account that I am also using in the chat itself.
Always good to have you back. And next up, we have Kyle Breeder.
Hey everybody, glad to be here again. I hope Aaron's doing all right. When I was there last weekend, it was like extremely bad, and it's only gotten worse. So if anyone's, I specialize in cannabis breeding and specifically feminized seeds. If anybody's looking for that kind of thing, I do have a website, which is the letter P followed by breeding.com. On all social media platforms. I do reach back if anybody has any questions or any concerns about anything that I'm doing, or if you just have questions in general. I do giveaway every Wednesday, so if you want to get on that, I'm basically giving away big packs of feminized seeds for free. Just glad to be here. I'm glad everyone's still safe at the moment, and glad we're still here.
Cheers to that, and cheers to free seeds, man. Always happy to see you and anyone else who's doing that, giving them away. That's good stuff, sharing and helping the community grow. So thank you to you for that, and joining us again this week. Last and certainly not least, the American one. We might have some late joiners, but welcome.
Hello, Jack. Hello, panel. Hello, everyone in chat. It's always good to be here. I'm the American one on the YouTube, and the American one _ Keens on the IG. Most of you know me. I'm easy to find. You can hit me up in the DMs on IG, and good to see everyone.
Good to see you. Always happy to have you back. I thought a fun topic, at least to kick it off this week, before I'm going to try and use the actual YouTube survey feature this week, not the straw poll, so you won't have to click any foreign links. But before we get into that, I just kind of think it'd be fun to share maybe some stories about our times that we've had edibles, and maybe if it's gone awry, maybe when we've taken them a little bit too strong of a dose. And I think that we all may have had one of those experiences every now and then. And then to wrap that up, maybe we could give a suggestion on how to avoid getting that maybe too high of a dose, and or dosing recommendations for certain types of edibles. So I guess one that I could share recently, I had with a infused beverage, and it was only like 10 milligrams per serving, but I started taking like double and triple shots of these little things. And I was also consuming dabs and smoking during the time. But normally when I'm using cannabis, I feel very comfortable using it. And I just got like kind of that tinge of like an uncomfortable high. And it reminded me of times when I was younger where I just like eaten too many brownies and gotten high for like a whole day, or got really high where you feel paranoid, like every car you see you think is a cop car or something like that. And they can lead to unpleasant experiences. I tend to find that happen with edibles. I know it's not strictly grow related, but a lot of us end up using our trim and other things to make medibles, edibles, whatever you want to call them, infused cannabis things. I know Spartan Grown is a longtime cannabis edible user, and the American one is a cookie a day kind of guy. So I'll pass it first over to Spartan Grown and ask if you've ever had one of those experiences where maybe you took a little bit too big of a dose, and how'd you end up dialing it back down and figuring out like appropriate doses from that point forward?
Yeah, for sure. So I've overdosed, we'll say, on cannabis when I was early starting to make edibles, and I made brownies. That I made them in mini loaf pans, like you'd make a zucchini bread out of or something, just the smaller loaves. But I ate the whole loaf, and without even sitting down and trying to figure out the dosage, I just ate it because it tasted good. And later, after the fact, I sat down and figured out how much oil I used and how many loaves I made and how many milligrams that was. And it was over like 1,000 milligrams of THC. And it was like a psychedelic experience. It fucked me up. And I wouldn't say that it was, I wouldn't say it was terrible, but I wouldn't want to do it again, if that makes sense. And I got the spins, so the rooms were spinny, so I'd have to make sure if I turn the light on so I could see something to focus on, it would stop the room from spinning. And then after that, it was more like I just lost my sense of reality, I guess. And it was almost like a dream, kind of. Like I was thinking, I might have gone through this on here before, but I was, for some reason in my mind's eye, I pictured my whole self shattering like a shard of glass into a million different pieces. And I was like trying to will the pieces back together the whole time. And that lasted this whole thing, I can't tell you time frame. I don't know. It seemed like it took forever, but it could have been 2 minutes, right? So hold on, let me silence my phone. That's annoying. And yeah, so to dial it back, my mistake was I just made shit and didn't even try to figure out the dosage. So after that, I learned my lesson that you can go too hard on cannabis and it can be a bad experience. So it's smart to at least figure out what your dosage is and dial it back. But you could do something as simple as, okay, I ate a whole loaf and that was way too much. I can eat half as one,
Oh, my internet cut out. I thought you froze, but I froze.
Yeah, but no, that's pretty much it. Was there another part of the question?
No, I think you answered it very well. And I just think that your experience is very good to share with the community, because I think a lot of people, if they haven't gotten into edibles, they're becoming more and more common, and they can make them themselves if they're growing at home, like most people that listen to the show do. So I think that it's a fun topic to touch on. And I know the American one is a cookie machine over there. He gets grumpy if he doesn't have that edible cookie a day. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you've ever had maybe too strong of a cookie dose, and then how'd you start figuring out that perfect cookie dose?
Well, you build up a tolerance if you continue to take it like every day. So that's a factor as well. But from the get-go, the first time I ever ate the whole cookie, I would just laugh. I was laughing with this chick for like an hour straight. Everything was fucking funny. But after that, I had uncomfortable experiences, but shrooming, not with edibles from cannabis. And but what did happen is I was totally disabled. Like I could not stand up and walk. There was I just couldn't do it. For I had to wait a while. So that's how potent the shit was. But other than that, I would enjoy it every single time. But I've had feedback from people like, man, I thought I was dying. I thought I was gonna die. Somebody gave it to their friends who had to go out to dinner with their parents to a fancy restaurant, and they could not stop laughing. They had to literally get up and leave the place because they couldn't control themselves. So yeah, you definitely can have experiences, And it's a totally different thing. People are like, yeah, but I'm a pothead. I smoke every day. I smoke a lot every day. I'm like, yeah, it's not the same. It affects you differently, and it is awesome. Or it could be frightening. Yeah, it definitely could be frightening. So
Let me ask you this question, Tao. If you could only have one high for the rest of your life, would it be an edible high or a smoked high?
yo, that's not fair, man. That is not fair. Yeah, dude, that's not fair. I have to say smoked, but that's like non-medical.
My
That's like
It's a lot
favorite,
less
ingredient.
convenient.
yeah, my favorite is edible high. I don't care, man. My RSO high specifically is the
But it's
best
just
high.
like
I could never
sometimes you
smoke
just
again.
wanna-
I would if somebody said I can't have
Yeah.
RSO, I can't have RSO if I, smoke flower, but I could have RSO for the rest of my days. If I chose not to smoke flower, I wouldn't smoke another bud ever. That's how much I like the RSO high. It's just, not only is it a nice high, but it's also medicinal, like you were just saying.
Yeah,
It's long,
definitely.
longest
I'm gonna-
lasting too. It lasts so much longer than smoking for me, at least. Dabs, flower, whatever. It's so hard to find something that can last as long as a good dose of
I'm gonna
cannabis oil will.
I'm going to also say and have to echo that, even though I actually don't really imbibe through edibles or anything like that for the most part, I'm going to echo what Cheddar Bob 13 saying. Your smoking is actually unhealthy for you, and that's a controversial subject, but certainly to some degree, I think it's uncontroversial to say that putting particles in your lungs that they're not meant to actually deal with maybe
Right.
is a little bit better or less better than like just ingestion like that. It's just in general,
I'll just be the devil's advocate just for fun. Not to say that I disagree with your point. I do think that smoking anything is potentially dangerous and harmful to your health, whatever. But there's so much shit in the environment in modern day, and most people
True.
live in cities and suburbs. And there was a case back in the Elden times when they prescribed cannabis for people who had asthma to open up their lungs because of the amount of pinene, and it helped people breathe. And I think in modern times, there's been studies by like UCLA, who I believe is a pretty legitimate school, and they've showed that people that smoked up to 3 joints a day actually had less incidences of lung cancer than people who didn't smoke cigarettes, cannabis, nothing. So there may be some people would theorize or postulate, and correlation doesn't not equal causation or whatever, but the people that were just smoking cannabis and not smoking any tobacco were not getting high rates of lung cancer like was suspected. And it's interesting to me to think that maybe there is, like Rick Simpson found with his high THC oil that he used to cure his skin cancer, maybe there's some anti-cancer benefits to the THC that's being inhaled in people's lungs.
I think that also it's a spectrum, like a lot of things, right? Like people's sensitivities. Just to bring up the chat again, CD Slow Trend Growing says that lungs are meant to deal with smoke.
Let me say,
but obviously not like, not like all the time, and certainly there can be damage, right? So some people are going to be more or less sensitive to this too. And over time, like something can be acutely problem and toxic to you, or it can be chronically toxic to you. And that's pretty basic pharmacology, I think.
It really does depend on what you're consuming too. Go ahead, Tyler.
My opinion is this. For certain conditions like PSTD, or if you're just stressing out and like if you're racy mind and can't relax, cannabis smoking could be considered medicinal rather, even.
Just like the breathing element, like calming you down.
And stress, stress is in the background of a whole bunch of diseases and things. So that could be medical, but the real medical is like Spartan and someone else saying about edibles, where you could take in doses that are impossible to intake. I think smoking it, because like if you have Rick Simpson oil and you do the recommended dose, that's 1 gram a day for 30 days. That's a lot. Like, but that's why people like Tommy Chong could smoke weed, or anybody could smoke weed their whole life and still get some sort of ailment. But I think if everybody could,
he
build up
stopped
a
smoking
tolerance,
when he got cancer. He was in jail for selling bongs. So he got cancer while he was in prison, not using cannabis. He got out and he started using cannabis again. So you might see the CBD thing saying that, oh, I don't use cannabis, but I smoked weed with Tommy Chong with my wife. We won some giveaway thing, and he still smokes like a fucking chimney. He smoked with us for like
Right.
2.5, 3 hours, joint after joint. Didn't pass on one, so he definitely still smokes high THC weed, like
There
no
you go.
problem. And
It's
he's
also
cancer-free
oh,
to my
sorry.
knowledge.
I just also want to say that it's true. It's also important to consider that like this is less about smoking versus edibles, so we're getting a little bit in the weeds. But I just want to say the cannabinoids in your system, you know, not only just your endogenous cannabinoids that your body makes, but the exogenous ones that we all know and love. Those can have effects on your physiology that you might not want to have. Speaking from personal experience, warfarin, a blood thinner, not something that I take personally, but I know people who do.
No other grower.
And yeah, and that can have an effect, right? And then also other things can modulate. No, of course, there's the things that we're trying to accommodate for medicinally, right? So I'm not trying to discount that, but you can have other interactions that are unique to yourself that you might not want. Also, interactions with other medications, for that matter, other medicinal substances. So
I'll say this:
that
I don't
should
think
also be
cannabis
considered.
is a cure-all, and I don't think that it's harmless by any means. I think there is potentially some damage that can be done, but I think it's much less than the health benefits that are associated with all the positive things that come along with it, whether it's psychological well-being or reduced inflammation, or maybe potentially the things that we're referring to with like cancer and the benefits there. But to get back onto Spartan's question, if I had to stop smoking to just take edibles for the rest of my life, I would choose the edibles for the rest of my life because it's the convenience of it. I love smoking, I love the smell. I'd still grow flower and maybe like, give it to my friends and things like that because I just love the smell of it. I love the look of it. And I love breaking it down and like even making joints and stuff for other people. Like even if I don't smoke it, I get joy out of that. But it's just so much less convenient. I'd have to smoke so many joints or bong bowls or whatever it is per day to get the amount of medication that I could get out of a few tubes of RSO and just be able to go to work and help people in a different way and not have to like take a smoke break every hour or whatever it is. And so that's what I would choose, but thankfully we don't have to choose. So I imbibe in both and enjoy them both very much. So I wanted to pass it back to Mathew on the edible front. Have you ever had a too large of a dose where you felt kind of uncomfortable, and if so, what kind of thing got you into that place?
Yes, I did. I've actually had it happen a few times, and in one case, I became a very hypermedic, and that was not great.
What does that mean for the layman in the audience?
So I started to have emesis a lot, which means that I started to vomit quite a bit. So that wasn't a fun experience. And the psychological effects of ondansetron or promethazine were really helpful for abating that sort of nausea reaction too, for those who have ever been in that situation. And of course, there's the common sort of folk remedy that I've used, which is a really hot shower. And I don't really understand why that was really helpful, but it was. So I in particular, this is unique to me. I definitely can have issues with nausea for other reasons and for other reactions. So I definitely don't take that as representative of most people's responses. I think I might be in the camp of people who have kind of like how for some people, caffeine from coffee makes them tired instead of wired. I think that I might be in the camp of people who has maybe opposite of the normal or typically normal reaction that a lot of people have to maybe at least certain kinds of cannabinic experiences, right? But the problem, of course, is that edibles can be hard to for me anyway, sometimes hard to tell how much you're taking and what your limitation is. So for that mysterious quotient alone, I can't really hang, or I'm very trepidatious. If I use very small amount, then it can be really great, and I can measure that. But I don't like to play hard and fast with the dose response.
Yeah, I would advise everyone to ease into the edibles, take little pieces until I know so many people that got ruined from it, but also I know people that have taken half of one day and loved it so much. The next day they take the other half and they get zonked, like, yeah, have an uncomfortable time of it the next day. So I also think maybe depending on the person, the day, what they ate, a whole bunch of factors come into play, which might make dosing more difficult with cannabis in general.
I think that it's also notable that for me, I've never been like, for example, I've never been like wasted with alcohol, for example, and I don't drink anymore. That's another thing that I can't handle. So with regards to that,
I'm with you on that.
but I definitely had issues. I've never gotten to the point. I've never gotten to the point of getting buzzed where my stomach could handle it. So I've never even gotten to that point. And I think that that's related in some capacity. I know that alcohol kind of works like a dirty drug. For those who don't know, a dirty drug is a drug that affects multiple things instead of being like a scalpel that could maybe affect one very specific thing about your physiology, essentially, especially when it comes to like your brain and that kind of stuff. So I think that like when I look at like my reactions to like basically too much like THC, for example, and maybe that could be modulated with other cannabinoids or other substances, or maybe too much alcohol, that sort of like nausea that comes on afterwards, whatever is like related in that Venn diagram, I think is what's affecting me. And it's also helpful that things that affect your nausea response were able to calm me down. So maybe something in the future that's a little bit more sophisticated might be helpful for those sorts of people.
So I just wanted to give kind of a little warning for anybody who does have the, like, I think it's called CHS, or even just any sort of thing that makes you have vomiting. If you're getting relief from hot showers and you are having vomiting with that, I would just put out there to try and stay hydrated. I know it's gonna be difficult because you are vomiting, but you have to try and get some liquids, probably even more than just water, like some sort of electrolyte drink. It doesn't have to be any specific branded one, but you need to rehydrate, because like Brandon had a friend who actually ended up dying from the complications of CHS. He was vomiting so much, I think it ended up having renal failure. So the dehydration has ended up what killed him, because he vomited so much and he was taking these hot showers and just he had it really, really, really badly. But it's just a cautionary tale, I guess. And the last person on the panel who I could pass it over to, I know that even just smoking a little bit for in your, like, more adult life has, made you feel paranoia and things like that. But Kyle, do you have any edible stories where maybe you took a little bit too large of a dose? And if so, what was it? And maybe how could you avoid it in the future by finding that proper dose, if you have so far or since then?
I do have one definite paramount situation that I had. I think this was, I want to say maybe 7 or 8 years ago. This kid showed up at work and he had this big square that looked like a fruit roll up, but it was like thick, and it was some kind of, just like a massive square gummy. And I was like, oh, let me try a piece of that. And he's like, oh, these are only for like, heavy users. He's like, well, he said one square of, like, let's just say if it was broken into 4 quarters, that 1 quarter was for heavy users. And I was like, all right, well, just give me like a little bit of that. But so for some reason he ripped it in half and then gave it to me. And I'm like, dude, you literally just told me that I'm only supposed to take like 1 square. And he's like, oh, either you want it or you don't. And I was like, oh, well, I used to be like a savage when I was younger. So yeah, I'll just eat the whole thing. So I ate the whole thing, and I was at work, and I was tweaking out extremely bad, to the point where I couldn't even like hold my tools. I was like shaking, and I tried to induce vomiting, but like it was already too late because it was like in my system. And I don't suggest this to anybody, but if anybody is having, this works for me. So again, this is not for everybody, but if you are having like an extremely panic attack onset, because especially with edibles, because like once it's in, like you're just basically screwed. Drinking a beer radically, it's an immediate, it's a downer. So it's like it's on the spot, right, immediate relief from that. And that's what I actually did. I had some beers in my trunk, and I like secretly grabbed one and basically just chugged it, and immediately it balanced me right out to where I was kind of fine. But in regards to moving forward, so I actually just had some. I was at the like a little mini vacation this weekend, and there was somebody had some gummies, and basically, they told me to eat the whole thing. And now, from so what I do, and it just ensures a better outcome, is I just do half. So whatever everyone thinks I should do, I do half of that, and then I just let it sit in, and from there I'm like, oh, I feel kind of bubbly and giggly, and then then from there I can gauge if I double that, aka eating the other half, where I can be at. And so I just do half, whatever people think you should do, I just do half, and I have a pretty good turnout on that.
It's definitely some good advice. It's like nutrient dosing, just sometimes cutting it in half will help you out there a lot. And I had a thought on the edible thing, but I totally blanked. So we have a few.
To
Go ahead,
real
Spartan.
quick, on the topic of if you feel too high, I put it in chat because just in case I'd forgotten. But if you feel too high, I found that CBD oil is the best cure. But things that are in most people's houses, you might be able to find some black peppercorns. If you bite down on those, that's not pleasant, but it does seem to help. I've tried it. Also, high sugary foods or sugar itself will like speed up your metabolism, which is going to push that stuff through quicker. There was something else too. CBD is the best. Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of. Just eating something, eating or drinking something. Get something in your stomach that could help too, as long as you're not feeling nauseous.
And it takes your mind off of the high. You're then consuming something. You're like, oh, this food it tastes good. You're probably high. It's going to taste better. What Kyle talked about with the beer is a depressant, the drug class depressant. It lowers your heart rate. It does a lot of other things, like Mathew mentioned. It's a dirty drug. Just technically, it affects like your vision, your hearing, a bunch of different stuff. It's affected by alcohol, just like cannabis affects a whole bunch of different stuff. But like one of the things is it can make people tachycardic, which means their heart rate is accelerating. And when you don't understand maybe that, or even if you do understand it's from the cannabis, it's just not comfortable to hear your heart like, beating in your chest. People get paranoid when they feel that because they're like, oh shit, I'm going to have a heart attack. And then that thought of I'm going to have a heart attack turns into like paranoia or panic attack, or it just gets your mind racing about other thoughts that you could be worrying about. So all the tips Spartan just gave were great ones. That was the thought I was having, I was going to suggest CBD and the peppercorns. Even if you don't have peppercorns, even just smelling black pepper, there's alpha pinene and there's beta caryophyllene, which are terpenes that you find in cannabis as well that will help calm and relax you. And just eating things in general, like Spartan was mentioning, all really great tips. So with that being said, I looked over to the chat and I see that we've got a decisive winner chat Q&A. Once again, I know that people show up live. They want to get their Q&A in. And we've also got concentrate making. So maybe we could touch on that a little bit later because that was 32%. 36% of the vote went to the chat Q&A. IPM, unfortunately, only 7%. And seed popping, cloning, and veg got 26%. So if we run out of question and answer, we could go to concentrate making. And when we're done talking about concentrates, we'll get into cloning, veg, and all that. And if we have any time at the end, we can hit IPM.
So the results of the poll do match up with my biases that most people aren't really worried about biosecurity until it's a problem. But we also talk about it all the time, so that could be the reason too.
That is true. We've had a few months where I think we went pretty IPM heavy, and I think sometimes they're like, hey, we're here. We have specific questions that might be not in any of those things. And we talk about those things a lot. So if you do have questions, tag at Sheep Home Grow, at Jack Greenstock, or any of the specific panel members you see here in the chat. If you see them commenting in the chat and you want to direct it at them, that'll be the easiest way for us to find your question. And we'll try and get you on the show that way.
Yeah, they could ask questions about those topics if they want to too. So they get it all.
Exactly.
There you go.
Yeah, if you feel like one of those topics that you voted for, you want to have us talk about, drop a good question, and who knows, we can end up rambling on about it for 15 or 20 minutes. That usually ends up happening. So whoever asked the first good question.
My biggest issue right now is my outdoor. I've got one plant, but it's getting tall. And it hasn't, it's just now beginning flowering. So it's still going to stretch like crazy. I'm trying to decide when's the best time for me to bend this fucker down. Should I do it now, early? Like I'm probably first week of flower right now. Or should I wait until like the middle of stretch, smash it down onto like a fence or something for a scrog, and then give it the 2 more weeks of stretch to get up to it? I don't know. I haven't, but I'm almost to the top of the fence that I need to be under.
I'd be scrogging at your point. I'd put a few posts around that plant, stretching that across it, and start widening it out.
Yeah, that's probably what I have to do.
While we're waiting for Q&A, I thought about this earlier too. I think a great topic that we haven't done in a while is a garden update. So you just gave us your outdoor garden update, Spartan. You've got a plant outdoor that's looking fantastic, if I do say so myself. You did the pruning. It looks like it's got some good airflow. It looks healthy and happy. How's the indoor garden looking? And what do you got going on in there?
It's doing good. What am I doing? So I just harvested a cuvee, and what do I got left in there? I got a Spartan Glue GG4 that's just come back into my garden. Shout out to Skilbo, he was holding my GG4 for me. So I brought that back in, and then there was something else in there. What was the other thing? Oh, sour diesel, and I have sour diesel going in there. But on the other light, I'm excited because I've got 2 of my Bliss Bud that I made, 1 and 3, I believe, or 1 and 2 maybe. And then I'm doing it's like a little experiment. So I'm looking to try to solve the issue with Mac as far as the slow veg. So my idea is to grow 2 small plants and put them in the same pot I would put 1 plant in. That way I can reduce my veg time, because I don't have to have as big of a plant because I'm putting 2 in the same pot. So that's what I'm doing right now. I've got a Mac that's in the same sip container, but there's 2 in it, one in front of the other. So right now they look great. So I'm happy. So I'm really excited to see that. And then my last plant in flower is something that was sent to me. It was an Orange Dream Haze, it's called. And the guy described it to me as being a fast finishing haze. And he said that it's usually done after 9 weeks. So we'll see. This looks great though. It's freaking won't stop.
That sounds kind of delicious. Orange
It
Dream.
sounds good. I always like when you get a name like that. Hopefully it lives up to the expectations. We do have a few questions now from longtime listeners. We've got Sour Diesel Tangy and Crack Babies DWC. First, Sour Diesel Tangy asks at Jack Greenstock, best disinfectant for room reset. Personally, I think that I know that it's not like the best smelling or best on the environment, but I think bleach, if you're really serious about making sure that you're trying to get rid of a lot of pathogens, is a good one. I think there is some gentler cleaners out there that you could use, but bleach has done well for me. And I don't ever do it when there's plants in there. I take plants out, bleach things, and then good old soap and water is also very effective. I like Dr. Bronner's, but I don't get much more fancy than that. So I guess I'll pass it over to Kyle. What do you like to do to disinfect between runs?
Yeah, I would agree with you, Jack. I would say that bleach and water goes a very long way in for many things. I'm trying to find out some products that there's been some studies about, and I'm not trying to go too off topic here, but the amount of cancers in stay-at-home moms versus working moms because of the amount of products that we all commonly use, like I can't even recall what the hell it was.
Like household cleaners, disinfectants, Raid, all
Yeah,
sorts of
just
like
right, and just
Roundup and shit.
being exposed to that long term is just like not good. So, and that's just something I just stumbled upon in the last couple of weeks. I was talking to somebody about it, so I'm trying to find out some more like organic products that maybe are just as effective. I don't know if you guys know of any, or what would be a good way to where to start or something.
You go to Zentanol on YouTube and you check out the best IPM that you can. But for the one thing I will say is honestly, ditch your Roundup. If anybody you know has Roundup, tell them to throw it away, never buy it again. That stuff, they're being sued and paying out multi-million-dollar lawsuits for all sorts
Already
of
have
cancers.
done that, yeah.
For several different states. Please protect yourself and your family. Don't spray it. Don't be around people spraying it. It is dangerous, in my opinion, and the courts. So that is one, Kyle, that might be part of that, the household people using that stuff. There are lots of organic options. I think one of them out there that I haven't tried, but people really seem to like for resetting is Zero Tol. I think it's spelled like XEROTOL.
Z-E-R-O. Yep, ZEROTOL, or maybe AL.
I think it is
TOL.
TOL.
That's just a fungicide. So here you go, Kyle. This is what you do. Do you eat any citrus fruits? Do you eat oranges or limes or lemons or any of that stuff?
I try to.
Okay. Go get you a bag of clementine oranges. They're easy to peel.
Right.
Get you a mason jar. I know you got one. Throw all your jar, keep that in your fridge. Throw all your peels in that, and then fill the jar with vinegar. Just regular, white vinegar or whatever vinegar you have, but white vinegar is usually what I use. fill that jar up with so it's got all the peels, and it can be a mix too. It doesn't have to all be like oranges. It could just be a mix as long as there's citrus. You're looking for that citric acid. And then, yeah, you put your vinegar in there and just let it soak. And then when you're ready to clean something, mix that 50-50 with water, and there's your organic cleaner.
I like that a lot. How many? Is there like a minimal time that it should sit, or does it really matter?
I wouldn't do, I at least a week is what I would do. But what I do, because I'm lazy, is I'll put like enough vinegar to cover what I have in there. So if I put a couple peels in there, I'll just pour in a little bit of vinegar and shut it and put it back in the fridge. And then when I eat my next fruit, I do the same thing again until it's all the way to the top.
That's actually really smart, man. I like that.
So Matthew, we have a question from Shredder0911 who says, at Jack Greenstock, what do you suggest to replace Roundup to kill weeds? I've tried vinegar and it does not work.
Vinegar
have a
will
general
work.
thought
You got to
on
mix
weeds?
it. You got to mix. It's not just vinegar. It's vinegar. So hold on. Let me get the actual recipe. It's in my phone somewhere.
You could always use dog urine.
I could share an ant killer, which I've just been using because in Southern California and probably many other places during the summertime, black ants are a nemesis to even people with the cleanest houses, and they sneak in. And the one that I use because I have cats and plants is it's like 95% water. And the other 5% is a mix of either vodka or rubbing alcohol, and you use peppermint oil and cinnamon oil and a little drop of like a soap to help be your desiccant or spreader. And shake it up, spray it. It smells good. It's not going to hurt you, your pets, or your plants, and it definitely kills ants like on contact. So I'll definitely back that.
Cinnamon. They fucking hate cinnamon. Vinegar, salt, soap. So here's the recipe: a gallon of vinegar, a cup of salt, table salt, and a tablespoon of liquid dishwashing soap. You mix that together, put it in your sprayer, and fuck your weeds up.
I always get nervous mixing
Does
like
it
those,
kill-
like vinegar and soap, because I know one of them makes like a mustard gas of sorts. It's soap and something else.
think you're thinking of
Bleach.
Yeah,
chlorine.
bleach,
Bleach, yeah.
and phosphorus detergent of some sort, I think, right?
There's a few combinations like that. You're not supposed to mix like H2O2 with a few other things, and I don't want to get into them because I don't want to give people bad suggestions. But be safe if you're mixing those things. Look them up before to make sure it's safe.
I was gonna say I use hydrogen peroxide to clean. I spray that on my cloning area, my cloning trays sometimes as helpful disinfectant without using bleach.
One thing I don't like using bleach. I mean, I'll use it on my clothes, but
Yeah,
the reason I don't like bleach is the whole fucking you got to go on behind it after it dries and fucking clean it again because it leaves a residue behind that can mold. And
yeah.
a lot of the, I guess they weren't scientific studies, but they were like people trialing using it, bleach versus mold. And a lot of the molds persisted and they just were dyed white from the bleach, but they were still there. So
Underneath.
not a huge fan of the bleach for cleaning my rooms. And I hate the smell of it. The fucking fumes. I hate it.
That's why I follow up with like a Dr. Bronner soap and water. I always do scrub after because the smell, it makes me think like, and Sequence has said he used it in the past on his walls, and then the plants that grew into the wall that he didn't follow up, you'd see the plant hit it and then shrivel up and die. So definitely I suggest following it up with soap and water. It'll get rid of that smell, keep your well ventilated area if you can have some fans running and circulating. But what do you think about just like vinegar? I know a lot of people like vinegar for cleaning. Does anybody use vinegar in their cleanup after?
I usually
Not
use
as-
cleaner.
Not as much myself. I did want to answer the question though. So weed management in general is not something I know a whole lot about actually. I don't have to deal with them too much, although I do know that no matter what things you're going to use, for the most part, so one of the benefits of certain kinds of herbicides, even some of the synthetic ones, is that they're selective for certain kinds of plant physiology. And you don't get that with some of the alternatives that might be less toxic in general. So you just have to consider about that a little bit. I think vinegar and the mixtures you were talking about are good options. But on a commercial scale, of course, you might not be allowed, or officially at least, to use certain things like this.
I think Shredder was asking for like their home use, how to replace Roundup like 1-to-1. And I don't think anybody mentioned like even manually pulling weeds, throwing a pair of gloves, go out there.
I was gonna
pulling.
say, actually, I agree with you completely, Jack. I know that sounds really like easy to say, tougher to do, of course. And I've done my fair share or over it myself in my life, but uh, especially in like a home grow situation, I think that you're in the perfect circumstance to actually control with physical destruction, whatever that might entail, whatever that's going to be easy for you in your
Yeah.
circumstance. I
I'm
think
a
that's a
big
lot
fan.
better for the environment generally than like for your soil environment at least.
I'm a big fan of those propane flame torches they use to burn weeds. Those are-
Fire purification is also a thing that's very popular in commercial and even home spaces. And I think actually, Jack, I think there actually is a California legal flamethrower out there for those who want to waff some flammen.
There's the Tesla was selling, or not Tesla, the Boring Company was selling a flamethrower. Elon Musk made a bunch of them, but those sold out. It's probably way more expensive than you could just get. I think it's like for roofing. People that do like roofing, they need torches for that type of application. So it's just like a modified roofing gun. But cool nonetheless. I was going to ask you a question and also share. There's a thing called Till. It's solar powered. You could
I
set
did
it
a
in
video
your,
on that.
yeah, so you basically let it out in your lawn or your garden. It's solar powered and it walks around your, garden, and you mark like which things are plants by putting little plant stakes around them. And then it identifies the weeds and it chops them up. So it just goes around each day and chops up the weeds. And the other thing is, if you don't want that or can't afford that, there's electric hand. They used to be gas powered, but now I think electric is probably more economical. Just a little hand weeder, go out and weed whack. It's actually pretty fun. Go through and chop them up. They end up being nutrients. A lot of times though, they regrow depending on what kind of weed it is. So if you chop it, it'll just grow right back. So that's why pulling it, taking it all the way out from the root will be more effective in many cases, or just like mulching and more effectively managing the area.
Mulch is the answer. Mulch is the answer to get rid of weeds forever. You just
Yeah.
bury them with mulch.
It's probably it's one of those things where it's like I can tell you what to do next time, sort of a situation like a lot of IPM stuff. But yeah, I think that like physical removal or destruction, however you want to accomplish that task in a selective way, in addition to like some sort of a barrier, whether that's like a mulch barrier, right, or a plastic tarp or a sort of mesh screen or solution like that to get ahead of it. I am very familiar with the phrase, and I think is very true. 1 year of seeding, 7 years of weeding, and ain't that the truth? So, preventing it from happening in the first place is, of course, superior if you can actually do that.
So we've got Noah the Grower just joined us, so I want to give him a chance to introduce himself.
How's it going, everybody? Yeah, sorry I was a little late there, but yeah, I'm Noah the Grower on Instagram. 2 E's, you can find me there. How's it going, everybody?
Doing well. I figured out the chat poll tonight on the YouTube. I don't know if you could see the YouTube chat, but I put up 4 options. Chat Q&A has 34% of the vote right now. It looks like 92 people have voted, which is pretty cool. Concentrate making is in second place at 30%, integrated pest management 8%, and seed popping, cloning, and veg is 28%. So we have some questions actually that I've copied over into the Zoom. I'll answer Crack Babies, DWC, and maybe anybody else can weigh in on it. They say amber, really CBN. They're talking about amber trichomes, really CBN, which is like is it THC to CBN? I personally don't believe so. I've looked at a lot of lab tests. I've mentioned this probably many, many times at this point, but many of them show the trichome photo and it'll show like 0% CBN, and it's very heavily amber trichomes. So that to me says that there are terpenes and other things that can oxidize and change to red, and not necessarily, or amber, always be correlated with CBN. But Spartan has a few other good questions following that up. So I'm curious if anybody else has thoughts on the CBN comment, and then maybe we can move on to these other ones.
Yeah, I've heard that same as what you're saying, Jack, that when it's live on the plant, it's THCA. And then when it turns, I don't even know if the amber means it's THC, like losing the A, but it has to go from THCA to THC and then to CBN. And there were samples that someone held long time. And when they tested it, there wasn't much CBN in it yet either when it was stored properly. So
it has to get hot or be in a ton of direct sunlight. Those are ways that it can oxidize to CBN, but it's definitely an interesting thing because even some sun-dried stuff doesn't turn to CBN. Like a lot of Jamaican stuff was really uplifting, even though they dry it in the fields. And I guess that actually helped with mold. Matt, I actually heard that on another podcast, and I was meant to ask you that question. Have you ever heard about people sun drying any sorts of flowers in the sun for, mold remediation purposes?
It makes a little bit of sense because it's like UV radiation. Like people treat their products or agricultural products with like UV, and in some cases even microwave radiation. Like with regards to nuts, one of the ways that they ensure that your nuts don't they don't have caterpillars coming out of them or any other sort of like pests is by irradiating them with microwaves, and then they use other processes to kind of find out or sort of tell whether the what.
So they do that same shit in cannabis. These big giant fucking people who don't
in Canada, Michigan, many places, yeah, they're using that to remediate for mold testing. Which, from my understanding, the mold is dead and still there. It just doesn't show up on the testing, which is kind of a gross.
I feel like it should be mediate, maybe not remediate, because they're not. Or I don't know. That's probably not even true. But I guess I feel like they're not even like processing it when they're doing that, right? They're just killing spores and potentially is this when they find there's a problem, or is this preventatively that you're talking about? Because I'm only familiar with the latter.
Well, in Canada, some places do it to every single crop they grow just to try and pass testing, and then other places do it just to their moldy crops.
Yeah,
But if they're already molded over, I mean, I feel like that's a QC control or problem.
No, I agree. It's just that's what they're resorting to, unfortunately, at corporate fucked up, poorly planned cannabis places. It's not ideal for sure.
That does not fill me with confidence.
We have footage that by we shout out Medical Mondays podcast. We've had a fan who works in one of these facilities take cell phone footage of them literally spraying with a hose like garden hose sprayer, the plants at harvest, just spraying them with I don't know what, but it's mind blowing some of the stuff that's going on.
It makes you wonder. I think we have much better questions in this chat than the big corpo fucking shitty growers have with their strategy. So we'll get over to Okie Grower's question next. He has a good question. He says, Spartan Grown, do you put anything in your sip containers to keep the res clean?
I do not. How I keep my res clean is I let them go dry. So I don't keep them full of water so that they can't accumulate a bunch of stuff. I fill it once. Most, like in early veg, it might go 3-4 days before I put more water in it. But in peak flower, I'm usually every day to every other day, I'm having to put water in it. But what I mean by having to put water in it is I wait for that res to completely dry before I add water again. So that's kind of how I manage my res that way.
I do similar, and I don't have any issues, but I do, I guess, put microbes in there, which some would consider maybe it's cleaning it up, it's eating shit down there. The ones that Brandon's solution is supposed to be able to work in anaerobic conditions, so I think that is beneficial, but I don't think it's necessarily cleaning. I don't look at that as cleaning. I think that you're like feeding the biology in the soil and the roots and all that good stuff. So it's a different concept. Most
of these soil microbes will produce, I don't know the name of it, but like slime around them. And so they actually, I don't know, I look at microbes as producing more dirty stuff than cleaning, I guess. But I don't know, they break shit down too. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really it depends on the microbe and the environment that it's in. We have another good question, unless somebody else wants to hop on the SIP question. They say, Sacred Garden asks, at Spartan Grown, can you please explain the simple way to make RSO?
Wow. Yeah, I can
in 140 characters or less.
I can simple it down quite a bit. Yes. So it's not the way I would do it, but yes, you can do a tincture, which is just your plant material soaked in alcohol. Use food grade alcohol. That way, if you don't do a good job purging it, you're not poisoning yourself in some way. And, food grade alcohol would be like, my favorite would be Everclear, which is a good example. 190 proof is what I get. And then you soak your plant material in that, and then you boil off the alcohol. And you're like, well, let me actually, I skipped a step. That was too broken down. You have to soak it in alcohol, then strain out the plant material. Then you're left with a tincture. then boil off the alcohol, and then you're left with RSO.
That is the good way to boil it down as far as the concept goes. The one thing I would suggest is if you're doing it, do it outdoors or in an extremely well ventilated area. Please don't blow up your house or catch yourself on fire. A lot of people use like an easy up tent, go outside, set it up on like a little easy up table and have a crock pot and they boil off some of this stuff, and that works for them with a fan blowing over it. Just be safe, please.
That way is going to get extremely expensive because alcohol's not cheap.
No, I agree. I got an extra craft because of that. I reclaim the shit personally.
Exactly. It's like
it pays
once
for
you start
itself.
making it, once you start making it and you're liking it, then you're going to want to start looking at these machines that can actually capture some of that alcohol as it evaporates, so you don't break the bank trying to make it. I mean, some of this stuff is, I don't know what the prices are out there, but up in the northern area of Michigan where it's more remote and stuff, where they can get away with price gouging, I guess. I've seen 1 gram of RSO asking $100 for it.
That's fucked. We could get 2 for that here, but I mean, even 40 to
know.
50 a gram is expensive in my opinion. It's not affordable if you're trying to do, like Tal was talking about, if you're trying to do the gram a day for, I think it's, I don't know if it's 30 days or 90 days. Does somebody have the Rick Simpson protocol? Because I thought it was even more than that. I think it might be 3 months, but I could be wrong.
So,
Well, I think you got to build up to that.
Yeah, it's over time. You start with a grain of rice, and by the end of it, you're doing a gram a day.
Yeah.
no, so, okay. So
I don't know though. Yeah.
So
Don't
the
quote
point,
me on that.
so this is how I tackle, especially cancers. And that's, your goal is to a gram a day. Before you get to that goal, doesn't count for shit, right? As far as that month process, that month of a gram a day, you want a month of a gram a day. So whatever it takes you to get to, ramping up to that is just practicing. You're getting a little bit of healing, but you're not getting the full effect, kind of a thing. My uncle never made it to the 1 gram, and it killed his cancer and he was done. So then I put him on the maintenance dose of eating a gram a week, so he could break it up into whatever dose he wanted at that point. But if I had a new patient that I knew that came to me and they had cancer, that's my goal always in my head. I got to get them to a gram a day. So I'm going to just keep talking to them every time, and we're going to dial in that dosage. Every 4 days, we're going to try to double that dose. That's kind of how tolerance generally works. But it's constant back and forth feedback. How did that make you feel? What time did you take it? Blah, blah, blah. All those kinds of questions. But you can dial it in and really get it fine tuned. You just want to get up to a gram. And once you get to a gram, then
it's doable. It's a lot easier than people think. I think the first few days can be really tough. If they try to take too heavy of a dose, they think it's like so potent. But I think if you can break it up to 4 doses at 0.25 doses per day, that's usually pretty manageable for people, or like 3.333s, like 1 in the morning, 1 at lunch, and 1 before they go to bed, kind of thing.
Yeah, I do 0.3, 0.3, 0.4. That's how
perfect.
I do that bigger dose at the right before bed.
Yeah, that's actually a good way of doing it. And I think a lot of people can manage that. But starting at that is going to be, you're not going to be functional for the first few days for most people. So if you have like a weekend off or something like that, and it's definitely, or especially if you have like a severe cancer, this is probably something people take their life very seriously. And if it's in question, I know a lot of people that have used RSO and are now completely in remission and cancer free. So I've seen it work for lots of people. And also sometimes doesn't work for some people. So it is, I think, a great option for people to have out there. But we've got some more questions. I'm so passionate about that topic. I could talk about it for fucking hours. And
dude, I could do a whole show on it, man.
Donate to Rick Simpson if you have extra funds, because he had a stroke 20 years after getting cancer. He removed his skin cancer, he claims, with his cannabis oil. And I personally believe the story. And he's gone on to help many, many, many others with his story and personally by giving them oil. And now he's in a place where he's got a lot of medical expenses from the fallout of having a stroke. And so if you have the extra and you can kick it over his way and RSO has helped you, then maybe you consider donating, because I think he's a really awesome character in this community and just a man of good moral character. And I think he deserves whatever people can spare, because he's brought that medicine to my attention and many others and helped relieve so much pain and suffering and in my opinion, saved lives. So
I want to
can't thank him enough.
I want to add one thing before we move away from RSO, and it's just because I was reminded in chat, Al the Beastly was asking, how much does RSO help with inflammation? And it helps with inflammation a lot. But if you want to target inflammation, like specifically, I would order, you can get these, there's many sites. I don't want to like throw somebody out there because I'm not getting anything for it, but you can go online and find these hemp flower sites where you can get it ordered right to your house, and it comes with testing, so you can see how it tested, the flower tested, and you can even go after minor cannabinoids. Like if you knew that there's some, like you read a study that, you know, whatever it is, you know, whatever minor cannabinoid shows promise in this case, inflammation, you can target that and pull it out of the hemp market for super cheap. You can even buy trim off the hemp market for really cheap. And you can make some of these blended oils where you can take some hemp flower, put it in with your regular THC flower, and now you're getting a fuller spectrum because you can pull in that CBD. CBD, of course, is really good for inflammation, and that's what I like to use the CBD for as well. Or you can just do like I did, as I just did a whole run of just the CBD flower, so I'd have CBD RSO. That's my, oh shit, I'm too high, I can take a CBD capsule and be really good. So there's lots of ways to do it, but if you're looking to target inflammation, I would mix the two together and make the RSO, or make the two RSOs and mix them together, however you want to do it. I think it'd be easier to mix the flower together and then make the RSO. That way the oil will be blended together.
There's CBG hemp too, and I don't care if you plug. I always show this point. I think it'd be nice if you do know one. I know Skillbo orders off of one of those hemp sites. My problem is I don't know who's actually like testing for pesticides, heavy metals. Like, what is a good one if you do know one? If
The
people
one
are
I
curious.
used was Happy, I think it was called Happy Buds, with a Z, I believe, at the end. So HAPPY and then BUDZ maybe. Our Skibbles in chat. Skibbles, shout it out, man. He knows what's up.
He's recommended me one. He got a CBG batch that he actually liked. I think he did a tincture with CBG, and he's done CBD tinctures. He's done THC tinctures. So it's really cool. He does the roller balls over there with a whole bunch of different other good stuff. So shout out to Skillbo. Thank you for listening, and shout out to the Michigan Bros Grow Show. They're going to be on in about an hour, so make sure to check them out later. We've got even more questions over here in the chat because, like I said, if I get off, me and Spartan start talking about RSO, we could just have a whole night of RSO talk. And some people would love that, but I'm sure we'll get other people's ear off. Cannabis Flower asks, should I use aircon, heater, Dehu, humidifier inside my tent, or condition the room right outside my tent? Kyle, you've got a little bit of time left, so I want to let you answer this before you have to run.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question one more time?
Basically, should they run their air conditioner, heater, dehumidifier in the tent, or should they air condition the room around outside the tent?
I mean, I think, well, it could be, if it depends on if it's a space issue or not, or what the scenario is. I mean, I've tried a lot of the portable air conditioners have a pretty heavy, well, the key, first of all, where I screwed up the whole way down the road with this is you got to make sure you try and get the air conditioner that has the in and the exhaust in the intake, so that way it's not sucking from within the tank. I'm sorry, within your tent, or if you have a groom, it's probably different. So that's something I had a problem with, is, and then I had to like customize, like I put like a box and then tape the box down and then ducted it out. It's just like a whole problem. I mean, I run everything right outside of my tent. You know, for me, it's I just condition the air around the tent, and then I basically have a, I think it's probably around like a, I don't know, maybe 50-gallon like storage container, but it's on wheels, and I just basically have my two, you know, my air conditioner. I have it set up on milk crates, and which gives me enough height, and it allows the drainage to come off into that storage container, and then I basically just roll it into my bathroom, dump it into the tub, because I mean it fills up within 3 or 4 days, and then I just roll it back, and that's kind of how I do things, because the air conditioner I have is it's a dual. It does it conditions the air plus kind of sucks on all the moisture, and I found it to be a pretty convenient setup. It was only like a couple $100, or maybe, you know, $200-300 at the local grocery store. But I'm sure it's situation dependent. I mean, I've tried doing it inside, but it just takes up a lot of real estate if you have a tent. But you know, it's just, I mean, but the key is, as long as you're conditioning the outside air, and then you have, you know, your fans blowing in, so obviously now you're getting fresh air, and then you have stuff ducting out. That's why if I have passive air coming in from below, and then I have two 8-inch exhaust fans blowing out on the top that are exhausting into carbon filters. And that's kind of, if some of you guys can picture that, that's kind of how I have things set up. But on that note, I do appreciate everything you guys are doing. I'm still I'm having to do some classes for my driver's license still, so I'm kind of consumed on that before it gets too late, or else I lose my license. But yeah, I'm just glad to be here. If anybody's looking for feminized seeds, if somebody jumped on late and didn't catch it, I do have a website. It's the letter P followed by breeding.com. I'm on all social media, and if you guys want to reach out, please feel free. I communicate pretty heavily on there. I do a giveaway every Wednesday. It's on Instagram. It's just, there's a lot, so I'm only kind of maintaining it on there. Or just reach out to me on email, and I can situate somebody if somebody wants to get in and they don't have social media. I'll work with you. But I appreciate everybody being here, and everyone have a good night.
Thanks for coming, Kyle. I always appreciate you. Have a good night, and get that stuff taken care of. Don't want to lose that license for sure.
Yeah, man. Cheers, buddy.
Have a good one, Kyle.
So the question,
Later.
Spartan, I guess, or anybody else want to jump on should they air condition inside the tent or should they do outside the tent?
I do what Kyle said, because if you put the air conditioner in the tent, you're losing floor space or whatever. You got to be losing floor space.
Or you're working with a mini one that's not going to be as efficient.
Some weird, I don't know. I don't know about anyone that's going to be able to, but so yeah, I pretty much do it like him, but it, like you said, it's all dependent on the situation. And if it's a huge room, or if it's like a 3x3 in the garage, then I would figure out some way to maybe, you know what I'm saying? You're not going to
build it in, box it
the whole
in.
garage. Yeah, you have to figure out. So it's all situational. But because where I'm at, I have 2 tents in one room, and they fill the entire space except for like a walkway, a foot that I have to sneak through on either side, but just one side actually, and then a foot behind it. And so that the AC in the window can cool the whole room, but only one tent is on at a time. So it's only generating heat at once, one side. So that's how I do that.
So
I like Brandon had a technique where he had a mini tent next to his tent where he had an air conditioner inside that tent, and he was piping the cold air into the tent when it was hot, essentially when it needed it.
Right.
He did the same thing that Kyle was talking about, where he put the box over the part where it's shooting out, and then he put like a vent on it so it directly ducted into the next one, which I think is definitely a cool strategy. It was like it was one of those tiny little, like almost like display tents that like they're not even really meant. Some people do grow in them, but they're super, super tiny. But go ahead, Spartan Grown.
So this is my strategy a little bit different. I always am trying to think 3 or 4 steps ahead if I can, because the one thing that I hate the most is going down and looking at my shelves full of shit I bought that I didn't need. That pisses me off. Or shit that I outgrew and then I'm not using it anymore. I hate fucking just shit laying around. So what I would do in that situation is, if the room is giant outside the tent, I would build a smaller room around it, just enclose the tent, but leave me enough space for all that equipment, for the same reasons that Todd was saying. I don't want to sacrifice room in my tent when I can put it outside the tent. I would, if I don't have a room, I would build a room around it. The reasoning for that is that I could set up all my HVAC and all the temperature control, all that stuff on that outside of that room. It's called the long room. And then I can grow into that space and just take that fucking tent down, and all of my equipment's already there and set up. I just had to take the tent down, and now my, room just got bigger. And that's exactly what I've done. I'm started out in a tent, but I'm no longer in a tent. But what I did was I built a flower room next to it, and then I built a dry room, and then I took the tent down and just built the long room that it was already in just became the bedroom. So no longer a long room, then it just became a bedroom. And all my equipment was already in there and installed. I didn't have to move anything. All I had to do is take the tent down, hang an extra light.
It's definitely nice to grow into the gear as opposed to growing out of it and having it sit on a shelf. That is one annoyance, and you can always sell it, but then it gets into the position of like, then you're like putting it out there that you grow, and who do you sell it to? Who do you give it? And you have to transport it, shipping it. It's a pain in the ass. So I'm with you on not wanting to buy stuff and then have to like not use it. The thing that I was talking about, Tao, when you said, oh, it's going to take up your floor space, people in the cannabis growing community, the scale is far and wide. So like there are people growing in 5-gallon
Yeah.
buckets, space buckets,
Yeah.
right? And then there are people growing like my tiny ass 5-square-foot tent, where I actually thought about for a little while, and I used like damp rid buckets in the bottom of my tent in the first grows before I had a strong enough intake and exhaust fan, because I just couldn't control the humidity. But there are like these little, probably the size of your hand, air conditioner units. They're like made for the car. You
Right.
can like charge it. It's got like a USB. And I've seen people use those in the grows. And it's like, it might not be a ton, but it's just enough for them to
I
get.
bet you there's someone with a window unit on a step ladder, like with a hole cut in their tent somewhere. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, no
With
doubt.
a bucket underneath it.
I saw a guy who had like a window unit fan in the back of his tent. That was like, they cut out the back of the tent just to have the window unit there. And it worked really well for him. So, I mean, props to him. And the question is so difficult to answer because there's so many unknown variables. Cannabis flower, like if you have an 8x16 tent, it's different than a 4x4 or than a 3x3 and then like a 2x2 or 2x4 and things like that. So there's a lot of unknowns, but I think that we definitely covered this question in a fair amount of detail. But there are so many options, like from small dehumidifiers I was considering on Amazon, but I was like, that thing is not going to dehumidify too much and I'm going to have to empty it all the time. It's going to be annoying as hell. So it's like, you got to think of the practical ramifications. Kyle gave a good description of how he set it up, but if you have one of those Dehus and air conditioners and you don't have milk crates set up and, you know, a bucket below to catch it, or a lot of the fancy people direct pipe their shit out. So if they can run it to like a floor drain or somewhere, they have the hose that goes from their AC or dehumidifier and it just dumps it. They never have to remove that thing. That'll make your life a lot more convenient. But part of growing is, it's a labor of love. You know, you're going to be doing physical work. You're going to be removing water. You're going to be moving water. You're going to pick it up and fucking pour it through the plants, and you're going to suck it out with a shop vac and things like that. We are glorified water boys a lot of the time, and cleaners. Like we were talking about earlier, the cleaning between runs. That was a great question because a lot of the time, what we're doing is just cleaning up. And if you want to have a successful grow, at least, I think you got to keep your stuff clean. And
Can't say that enough, man. It can't, even at the commercial level, same thing. It's like, when people ask me, what's it like to work in a big place? I'm like, it's 50% janitor and 50% growing. That's pretty much it. Sometimes more janitor than growing.
Really, you're just trying to be a facilitator, right?
Yeah.
You're just trying to facilitate the plants to do what they're going to do.
Yeah. And when you're at a larger scale, you're really using automation to make it so that you don't have to do a lot of the garden tasks. You're just there, like you're saying, you're just the babysitter. You're there watching, making sure everything's taken care of, and then trying to keep everything clean.
No, I want to draw you into this conversation because I know you've got some experience with AC and Dehu. How did you go about sizing your AC and Dehu? Did you use like the 1,000-watt? I think it's 3,400 BTUs per, X amount of hoods, you're going to need X amount of cooling, or what was your approach?
Well, it's kind of funny what Spartan said earlier. I'm the same way. Like from when I first started, I have like an old 600-watt ballast that I don't use. I have like a 4-inch exhaust fan I don't use anymore. So like when I set up my room the second time, I did everything overkill because you can always like adjust your settings down. But like I got like a 2000 CFM Fantech exhaust fan. I got like a 36,000 BTU AC. So it's just, I mean, if you can afford to do it, I mean, you just want to do it. You want to do it right, because if you do it the other way, you know what I mean? You're going to have that 4-inch exhaust and that, that ballast and the little hood you don't use anymore. Better to just pay up. So that's kind of my opinion.
I love the whole thought of saying quality is cheaper in the long run. And if you can afford to invest in like getting the proper size or big enough, or even like a little bit larger than you think you need, because there's going to be that fucking summer heat wave that kicks and it's a little bit hotter than you're expecting. And it's not just the heat from the lights, it's the heat from outside and everything. So I definitely think that overclocking things a little bit and the cooling and dehumidifying departments are definitely can be beneficial and save your ass in some grows entirely. Because if it gets too hot for too long, your plants are going to get cooked. That's like one of the major failure points of big crops that I've seen. Their whole crop gets too hot, even just for a day. And that could basically like melt your plant or get them unrecoverable.
It's not quite the same thing, but you reminded me of something that Dr. Jay Lund said, who's a University of California professor, I believe, talking about drought. I was just reading about how apparently, according to him, 2021 is the third driest year in 100 years in California for precipitation. 2020 was the ninth driest year on record. Like, things are going to get drier for sure.
The
And
whole West, I
Yeah.
was specifically watching, I think it was like Texas and maybe Arizona area, but they're saying it's like a 30-year drought or some ridiculousness right now that they're steadily going down, and they haven't had water in so long. It's amazing that it's not being talked about on the news and shit.
Yeah, it's they can't, politicize or make too much money off of it, or they don't want to admit that there unfortunately have been catastrophic mismanagements of how to deal with forest
Yeah.
fires and water.
And
in
management
general.
period. Yeah. Just agriculture and yeah, forestry. It's like so much. Yeah. I don't have
It's
the
brutal. I mean,
answers.
Aaron the grower is literally not with us tonight because he is miles away from a fire. And
Caldor fire.
so we're
That's been
praying
going
for him.
for
We hope
8
that it
days and
keeps
it's
going the other way.
0% containment. Yeah.
0% containment after
90,000
8 fucking days.
acres. 90,000 acres burned. 0% containment.
Going on 9 days now.
Or we'll
I think.
spend billions on dollars than going to war, but we can't, help.
Or
our own
leave
country. Can't help our own
literally billions of dollars in equipment. Why is it
Yeah,
that I can't
what I
have
mean.
an MRAP? Why can I not have a striker? Why can I not have well, I probably couldn't afford them or the maintenance cost, but still, it's the principle that counts. Like,
I will say
give me
this.
my
It's the
smoke
laser-
grenades at
Yo,
least.
guys,
like-
it was the laser on Jeff Bezos' rocket ship that started
That's
that
right.
fire.
That's right. It was
Come on
it was
now.
it was the
Get
giant
with
space
it.
laser. You're right. That's true.
Yeah.
And going back to the fire
Yeah.
in California, I think that I can't bring this to people's attention enough. The budget was cut from $52 million to $2 million for clearing dry brush and forest to prevent forest fires and doing controlled burns to prevent basically people's houses being burned down and people literally dying in some cases in these past 2 years. Although they have been the driest, we've also had the most damage from the forest fires because when you cut a budget from 52 million to 2 million for a giant ass state, the fifth largest economy in the world, that was Jerry Brown's doing. And then our new governor, Gavin Newsom, who's currently being in a recall election. People are voting to, should we recall him? If so, who should we replace him with? And Kevin Paffrath, who's like a YouTuber, Meet Kevin, he pointed out that, and many others have, there's been articles about this, Gavin Newsom overestimated his fire prevention by 960%. He said he was doing controlled burns because it prevents actually wildlife death because they can see these fires coming. The endangered wildlife, they don't do it in those territories. They burn air strategic to create fire breaks between neighborhoods. It's actually like $50 an acre to do this versus fighting fires is $1,500 per acre. So when they're having wildfires and they're trying to save people's lives and houses and evacuating people, spending $1,500 an acre, they could have prevented a lot of it by doing $50 an acre work that they cut out of the budget, which it's not like a left or right political thing. That's just a mismanagement of government funding because there's a lot of other money going a lot of other places that could have gone to that and saved lives. And I don't know. I just think it's sad to see that a place like California that can have so much prosperity can also allow corruption to have politics basically fuck things up so much that you have people moving out, companies, people, large status people, and it's just not to get too dreary. I want to get back on that growing topic, but I need to find some questions in chat and get us off of this whole
Doom and
California
gloom.
wildfire subject.
Well, a couple people in chat have commented on my red nose. I've got lots of red body parts. I was out on the lake. You can see the sunglass mark right here, and I've got like a little bit of the raccoon look because I was on the lake floating on my back for hours yesterday. And so I'm a little red today. But
it actually hasn't happened to me in a long time. So it's very serendipitous you say that because a couple of days ago, I too was sun-kissed and got a little bit red on my neck area and my palm, the backs of my palms and things like that. But it cleared up pretty well.
Yeah, I threw some aloe vera on. I hope I can preserve this color. I actually have a little bit of color for a change, so that's cool.
Michiganders don't typically get that claim. although you during the summertime, I was in Ohio and I got more tan in Ohio than I got in California. Because like out here, I'm avoiding the sun. Like I'm trying to like stay in the shade. I work outside, so I'm not trying to get like more sun. You can see I have fairly toned skin from being outside all the fucking time, and I still put on sunscreen just because even though I wouldn't typically get burnt, the sun is a giant, basically nuclear reactor putting off radiation all the time, and it does cause skin cancer. One of the families I work with, the dad just had skin cancer removed, so it's a real thing, and people should. I'm a big fan of Sunbum sunscreen. I'll fucking plug that. Shameless plug. They don't give me any money, but it smells really good, and it doesn't have any fucked up shit in it. No benzene like the Johnson and Johnson shit.
I say it used to. I used to give people skin cancer. That was hilarious. Or I guess it's not hilarious, but it's fucking crazy.
Yeah,
It's still happening. There's a recall. Johnson and Johnson.
Yeah, there's a ton of them. I keep seeing yeah, that's messed up. How put this sunscreen on your kids, and now there's cancer warning on stuff.
Yeah,
It's got benzene in the one. Like that was the big issue. Benzene is a carcinogen, known carcinogen, and that was in a lot of their sunscreen. So you just got to be careful with trusting the big corporations like that, in my opinion, because that's the fucking ultimate irony, right? You take it's like taking a medicine and then it gives you the fucking thing that you're trying to prevent. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I take my chances with the sun, as you can see.
Yeah, humans have been under the sun since the beginning, I believe, right?
Dude, I don't know. I wasn't there.
I know. But
Let's ask Skilbo. Skilbo.
yeah, Skilbo would know.
He goes,
Yeah,
"Oh, I
Skilbo was
remember
there.
creation. It was a Thursday."
Then people named it after Thor for some reason. I don't know about that guy.
I tell you what, though, when I go, it's something about it's obviously on the water, the reflection is crazy, and I was just stupid not to wear sunscreen. I would wear sunscreen, like when we do the floats, the Gross Key floats for the Michigan Bros Grow Show. I wear waterproof sunscreen then, just because the first time I didn't, and I suffered. That's the first time I ever had a sunburn where I suffered, and maybe that's why I was cocky about it. I never had sun like burn me that bad before, where I was like, "Now this is terrible shit right here." And then other people had it way worse than me either. I've seen people. I can't remember, was it might have been FLF. Some of their top of their feet were like blistering up from and I was like, "Oh my god!" So
you gotta go out. You gotta ease into the sun, like when you're harding off a plant.
dude, when you get in a float, what are you gonna do? You gotta float to the end, man.
You're tied
I
in.
used to go tan, and I used to get like brown, like stupid. I never got that stupid. Like
When I
in
was-
that one movie.
When I was a
But I
kid,
used to get dark, man. Yeah.
I did too. When I was a kid, people would often try to tease me and call me like, "Hey, there was that little Mexican or whatever," because I would get super dark because I was a farm kid, man. I was just outside all the time.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. Back in the day, I mean, like that was like a class thing, and I guess still to this day, it probably could be looked at that way.
Definitely still is.
I don't want to get into a lot of the chat has gone into the Afghan situation, which I don't think, not to offend anybody on this panel, but I don't know if we're nuanced enough to discuss it in a much greater detail. My heart goes out to the people there. It's got a rich hash culture, and the next highest vote in our poll is concentrate making. So I think we can kick it off first by talking about hash making, and maybe get into other forms of concentrate, like we talked a little bit about RSO earlier. But in Afghanistan, people, because Frenchie made hashish very popular in the modern community for a lot of newer hash users, like the old fashioned hashish, a lot of them think that these countries are making water hash, but they're predominantly actually using dry sift. And Afghanistan, being one of those countries who's got thousands of years, potentially plus history of growing and extracting cannabis, or sieving cannabis, as Frenchie would say, and making it into hash. So one person I see out there who's kind of carrying the dry sift flame, there's a guy, Dry Sift Wizard. He does like the 10-second sift, and he talked about how you're really not trying to, you don't want your trim to be beat up if you're dry sifting. You want it to be basically like as pure of the leaf as possible, because you're trying to shear the trichome heads. And something about dry sifting, a lot of people go a little bit too aggressive and get too much plant matter. It's a fairly delicate bounce process, and the earliest basically sieves are the highest quality. Frenchie referred to it as the cream or the creme. A lot of people also refer to it as that. It's the highest grade. Some people call that like your 6-star, your full melt, the best hash that you can get. And definitely a lot of people in Afghanistan, like Baba and others, he's the Afghan selection guy, that have been talking about this whole situation actually for months. There were people like breaking down dams and things like that. So it's unfortunate when you see places with rich cannabis history be war torn and have their own issues like that are going to prevent a lot of them from being able to do that. And in some cases, they might lose their lives. So I really just wish the best for the people over there that are peaceful. And with that said, does anybody, the American one, you make the cookies, as far as concentrate making goes, how do you go about doing it? Do you use a butter, and what's your butter making process like if you do?
I did use butter at the beginning, and now I've switched to coconut oil. And most jars of coconut oil, for some reason, like 14 fluid ounces, so it's not really a pound. But I continue to use 4 ounces of trim, and I get like a lobster pot, and I put in enough water to cover how much volume of the cannabis is. And then I bring in the water to a boil, I put in the oil, and I simmer it for 3.5 hours at least. And then I separate it, like same thing with the Rick Simpson oil. I strain out the material and I let it cool down to like room temperature. And then I put it in the refrigerator, and then the oil will separate and be on top, and the water will stay on the bottom. And then when it's cold, I just pull off the solid chunk of the oil, and I put it back in the refrigerator and let it dry out. And then I make whatever I want with it, which I always make chocolate chip cookies, because chocolate has animides in it, and whatever it is, it accentuates the high and prolongs the high, supposedly in conjunction with the cannabinoids. So that's why, and I think it's true, because I've made gummies and I figured out mathematically the same amount of oil would be equivalent to a cookie, and it definitely didn't get me as high. So I think there's something to that. So
Be throwing that oil, that coconut oil, in brownies, because usually brownies use oil rather than butter anyway.
that's true too. And yeah, you could use it. You could use the same amount of oil and substitute for any butter recipe, except for croissants. It won't do right with the croissants, they say.
The
Yeah,
fucking coconut
it won't
oil,
fluff up as much.
it's so easy to infuse too. If you just want to do like a simple infusion with oil, you could just sit it in there for 45 minutes to an hour, strain it, and then that's good to use. We've made brownies like that for years, and it tastes great. I couldn't taste the cannabis in it personally, just
And
by doing that
coconut
process.
and chocolate, how is that? There's such a good combination together. They go. That's the thing with coconut oil. You have to find things that coconut goes with, because there's some things that does not go well with.
That's true. It definitely has, the flavor will cut through on a lot of stuff, where the brownie might not even know that it was coconut oil. It just tastes like a brownie. And I don't really even notice the coconut, but it could be that I don't mind it or hate it like some people might. But that is a simple infusion. And like butter, it was such a bitch, like boiling it up. It stinks up your whole house. It takes a long time. And it just felt like it was a lot more difficult. And I don't think it's just like simply boiling it. Like you have to like keep stirring it and like keep it over a certain heat. To properly infuse butters, unless you use like a magical butter machine, not to plug them or any of the other infusing devices that you can make
I
infused
would
butter
never
with.
plug them, because I hate the way that they do their butter. But go ahead.
Yeah, because
Sorry.
it's a immersion blender, and it actually beats up the material, so you get a bunch of chlorophyll
Yeah.
in there, and you end up tasting really, really strongly the cannabis in there. So if you want to make edibles that people know for sure there's some weed in here, use the magic butter machine. That's the plug for them, I guess, because we're
You
definitely
want
not
green
sponsored.
butter? If you want green butter, that's how you do it.
I guess Skillbo, I think, makes tinctures and stuff with it effectively. So I guess there are some functional uses, and they have had subsequent generations. So I don't want to knock a cannabis specific brand that might be doing good things for the community, but definitely it might not be the perfect process. You can go about different ways to get good
So-
quality.
What's your opinion here? And Tao, you can bring it on this too, and anybody else. For some reason, I feel like when I infuse my butter, and I'm saying with the same amount of material, when I infuse my butter, it always seems to hit me harder than when I infuse coconut oil. It always seems stronger with the butter for some reason.
Are you adding heat in one and not the other?
No, they're both heated.
I didn't realize, I never, because once I went to the coconut oil, I did butter again one other time. But when I found out that, well, I or it seems like to me, let's put it like that, because I don't know, but it seems like the oil comes off the material much easier than the butter does. Like, and when I wring it out really crazy, yeah, the
You get a
oil
better
comes off, you
return or
get more,
whatever.
right. And with the butter, I guess I thought I don't know, it's probably just healthier supposedly with the coconut oil, and it's supposed to like go through your into your body easier.
Well, the butter that I use high fat butter. I use that Kerrygold.
Well,
I think
that
they
sounds
call it.
good to me.
But yeah, I mean, I'm just going by. I know that it's the fat that
Maybe,
is
right,
infusing
fat.
into. So I want as much fat as I can. So I get that. It's that
You know what
Irish
I was
Kerrygold
wondering?
stuff.
I asked this maybe here before. Is there has to be a saturation point where you can't put in 100 pounds of cannabis into 1 pound of butter and it's going to absorb it all. So
Right.
I'm wondering what the saturation point is, because
I think
at
it
some
depends on how
point-
much fat, right? So that's why I go
right,
for high fat
yeah,
concept.
I agree.
I mean, you
I
could
agree.
do it
It's
yourself with
super
regular
fat.
butter. You just have to melt it down and then skim off the solids, and it would be a huge pain.
Right.
in the ass.
How would you figure out with the saturation point though? We need a science crazy
So what you
lab.
would, the only thing I could figure out, like just layman's way, would be to keep increasing the amount of material. Well, keep increasing the amount of material that you input until
Right.
on testing the THC content's no longer rising.
Right. That's what you have to get testing every time.
Yeah.
But that's the way. Yeah.
It's tough too, because it's tough to get consistent material, like even run to run, and like you could use a pound this run and a pound that run.
Right.
You have to test the material going in.
75%. Well, not it would. Yeah.
Even like you talked about the half cookie. I've heard of stories where like maybe they didn't mix the pan enough, so that like the butter slid to one side and like no one was getting high off of the brownies over on this side, but people were getting smacked by the brownies on that side. So it's like the homemade stuff. You really got to watch the fuck out.
Yeah, you got to mix thoroughly, dude. I believe that could be a
That's
possibility.
why things like lecithin,
right,
they help
to
the oil
spread it out.
and everything blend well. Yeah, and it helps with digestion it too.
Yeah, the uptake
I like
too,
to
I
use
think.
sunflower. Yeah, uptake. Yep.
Did you use lecithin with both the butter and oil? I'm trying to figure out if there's any.
There's a difference. So I have that huge long process I do when I make the butter, whereas the oil, I'm just doing it in the crock pot.
Also, final question. This is kind of like hippy dippy, but did you grow up eating much coconut oil compared to the amount of butter? So you are what you eat, right? As some people say.
Your body was
my
microbes in my gut 100% have broken down way the fuck more butter than they.
So you're maybe more readily able to, because you've had more butter in your lifetime, able to consume it and uptake it. That's just a bullshit theory that I'm throwing out there, though.
Well, that's
I heard that theory from some other guy selling something on the internet. He's like, eat like your dog. Like you eat the same thing every day. Your body will adjust to whatever you eat every day, and you'll go right into your perfect.
Look in the blue zones
every day. That's so.
Look at the blue zones where people live to be 100 or older. Almost all of them eat at least one of the same meal every single day. Most of them use alcohol daily in very small amounts, like moderation. They're like at a light buzz. A lot of them are in high altitude, but I think part of that is decision fatigue. People wake up and they have to like choose, what am I wearing today? What am I going to eat for breakfast? What am I going to do? And by the end of the day, you're fucking worn out. So a lot of successful people will some people will take it to the extreme. They're going to wear everything they wear, like Johnny Cash, like all black. I only wear black.
I ate pizza every day for a month.
Too.
But that was just because I wanted to.
But it's definitely it's curious, because to get to the centenarian thing, a lot of them they're not even like necessarily wealthy areas or anything like that. It's just they have good social dynamics. They eat a lot of the same food all the time, and they're usually pretty physically active. And there's like 3 or 4 common blue zones where people live to be over 100. And the commonality, or not the commonality, the crazy thing about that is the life expectancy is dropping in like the US at least for the first time in the past 20 years. It was like, I want to say like 80 something, 88, and it dropped down to like 86 because I
wonder if that's a statistic thing though.
Well, an article pointed this out, and I think that there's some validity to it. I can't remember who it is to cite them, but there's been a lot of overdoses with like fentanyl and opioids. The opioid crisis has caused a lot of death, much younger death, what brings down the average. So when you're having tons and tons of overdoses, people dying younger, and there's like violent crime and other things like that, which is actually on the last 20 years down. But opioids is a lot of the people looking at that as a major portion of the reason why the life expectancy has gone down in the US at least.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the controversial nature of like saying things like that like things are less. I think that what's his name? The guy who wrote Steven Pinkler or something like that. He was talking about how conflict and violence in general in human history is actually at an all-time low or something to this effect. And I think that that's maybe true in some cases if you look at data in a certain way. And there's a lot of quotes about statistics being false and how you can manipulate them. But I do feel like that can't possibly be true in some cases, at least from like a proportion perspective. I just wonder if that's also playing a role here. Like if we have much more people, or, if you're having a situation where, like from the logic from before, like one of the reasons that life expectancy was thought to be very low was because people weren't accounting for like infant deaths and things like this. But so like maybe people are encountering like more of these sort of like sudden death situations that aren't really related to like dying of like the typical problems with old age, if that makes sense. But I have no idea. That's interesting.
I will say, for all the opioid deaths that are very real and happening every year, thousands and thousands in the US, a lot of people have found relief, fortunately, from cannabis. There are like literal retreats where people are withdrawing by just using a lot of cannabis. I've seen like documentaries. Vice has followed a few people. There's been several different things documenting people switching from heavy opioid use addiction to using predominantly cannabis or only cannabis. And they've said themselves that it saved their lives. And I know people firsthand.
One of the tools is RSO that they use there to help them when they're going through the withdrawals and all that. Even a high CBD RSO would be something I would be recommended myself. Because you could do that
100%.
cheap. You could do that so cheap. You could help so many people. It's just the time and the amount of effort to make it all,
It is an option though. And I think people, if you have family members, friends, yourself, if you're struggling with opioids, consider, I'm sure a lot of you are already growing and using cannabis, but maybe looking into the concentrates and the oils, because it's provided a lot of relief for a lot of individuals. And it can literally save your life. There are, to this point, 0 cannabis overdoses. And there may be like related deaths, which some people claim suicides or car accidents, or like if somebody consumed moldy bud and that led to their ultimate demise. Those can, I think in some cases, legitimately be considered cannabis related deaths. But as far as consumption goes, there is nobody who's consumed enough cannabis who just directly died of an overdose of it. Snoop Dogg, I think, has been trying for years and he has successfully avoided it. So if he can fucking smoke, I think he's like 50 blunts a day.
Let's asterisk this, and still the jury's still out with concentrates. We haven't been consuming concentrates for many years, as much as we have flour.
But like hash,
I think there's no
hash
jury
eaters
out.
for hundreds or thousands of years. There's people have been eating hash, bang in India. A lot of the people
Is that the
argue
same
there was
level
no
of
smoking.
concentration?
It's
Is
not
that the same level
exactly
of concentration?
Yeah, it's not exactly like 99
or the temperature or anything. Yeah, no, it's totally different.
And
I think in some cases the temps might be higher. They're extracting some stuff at lower temperatures to get the terpenes. That like Afghani hashish, they're like blowing stuff like propane torches over like a hubcap and like smashing it down to like decarboxylate it and stuff.
That's true. Yeah.
But with that said, I do agree that there might be like, personally, I feel terpenes are like the secret benefit, but also the secret potential harm. Because I saw a lot of stuff about dabbing at too hot of temperatures and that being really caustic and harmful to your lungs. If you dab like over 700, certain terpenes change and volatilize and turn into things that are really harmful for you. And on top of that, when you're extracting to like a distillate, like Noah or whoever just mentioned, 99% is a lot different than a 60% hashish, and 99% pure distillate every single day. I think maybe that could be related to where some of the CHS cases are coming from, because we've never had that pure or high of a quality or quantity of just pure, whatever it is, THC distillate or whatever it is. There's a lot of things that we don't know, and those are newer products to the market to have something so just pure, whatever it is. Terpenes, Some people have lab extracted terpenes they're ordering from whatever terpene.com, and they're using that in their mixes. They're using it in their pens. And when you heat those up, they're cleaners. Like they literally use them in Pledge. Pinene, limonene are floor cleaners at high enough concentration. They are caustic. They can strip paint. It is a serious thing. Like the plant grows it. The American ones, Amiaces, just killed an ant that was crawling on it. I just pulled an ant off the leaf because the trichomes are so sticky. It literally killed it. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't spray anything. I looked down I actually took photos and I was like, oh shit, there's a bug on there. And it kind of looked weird. And I went in, it just ended up being an ant. But yeah, terpenes definitely have volatility to them. And I think that there needs to be more research done, and people need to try and consume safely as possible. I had a thought and I lost it. That's a product of maybe using this Disty pen with some terpenes. But
Short-term memory loss, man. It's a
I don't
bitch.
know. That's a cause and effect. I would be careful about that. I don't know. It might just be correlation.
I'm only joking, but I guess we do have some time left. And I think we've touched on concentrate making. That isn't necessarily our specialty. We are the growing with my fellow growers crew. Some of us touch on that. And Noah, I'm curious, do you do any edible making or concentrates of your own?
Yeah, allegedly I've done some stuff like that before. The way that I've made concentrates that is really good, not concentrates, edibles, is with coconut oil, and then just use it like, as a, like butter, like you would in your recipes and stuff. But I found that the coconut oil works best for me. So, I mean, but everybody has their own personal preference. So
there's definitely some health benefits to it, and it works, and it's easy to work with in my experience. So that is one of the reasons we did it. It made things really, really simple. It was our go-to for a long time, and I've gone to like RSO and different other ways of consuming now, but it's a great option still for anybody out there. And I think it's affordable and widely available, so can't really go wrong. And the organic stuff is even fairly priced for, I think Tao said it's 14. That's one of the things with inflation that people don't think about. They used to sell 16-ounce coconut oil jars, and now it's 14 ounces. They sell at the same price sometimes. So you think, oh, there's no inflation.
Shrinkification.
Yeah. So the shrinkflation or whatever they want to call it. I don't know.
Well,
You
no,
know, I
butter
had-
still butter
Deflation.
still comes in pounds. Like it's just coconut oil. It's just so weird.
It's not just coconut oil. It's cereal boxes. It is chips.
Oh, yeah.
It's everything else. They
Twinkies
scale
are
it back.
like 75% of the size they used to be. It's like everything. Yes, you're right.
oh, it's just beginning too, guys. You just wait.
It's going to get a lot worse. I was going to ask, I had this like funny thought. How, or maybe we've talked about it a little bit before, but like, for example, we don't make our own vitamin C. We have to get vitamin C from other fruits and stuff. And some of our very, 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 very old ancestors were able to just biosynthesize vitamin C. Where I'm going with this is that the reason why that was selected out was because there was such an abundance of vitamin C containing sources that they could not biosynthesize it, have some sort of mutation that made that go away, and be totally fine. Now, I wonder, do you think that, I mean, this is just totally speculation and probably won't occur, but it would be kind of ironic if that happened too with us and using cannabinoid products so much. Probably won't get rid of our endogenous cannabinoids, but it's kind of interesting to consider how maybe certain substances that we consume that are maybe not primarily food substances or for nourishment, for nutrient uptake, over spans of time. I've had this thought, and I'm sure there are people who've also had this thought, like whether it's like drugs like alcohol, psilocybin. Of course, these things can have other effects.
One we know is SSRIs. Like SSRI,
exactly.
They actually change your ability in the future to produce your own serotonin. So if you take a large enough amount for a long enough time, there has been cases where people are no longer able to functionally produce their own serotonin without being on some sort of chemical regulation or a pharmaceutical, or at least not for long times without severe ramifications. So
neurogenesis for psilocybin, for example. And of course, there's the stoned ape theory out there. And I guess this is kind of like a similar sort of thing where I wonder how human culture even in like the several millennia that we're counting now, not even considering like, you know, more time than that of development, but like using like caffeine like we have like in sodas and various other things. What's another good example? I mean, cannabinoids is another one we're talking about. But I wonder if like the high intensity use of all these substances, even other pharmacological substances, might have some interesting effects on us as a population moving forward. I'm very curious about that kind of stuff because I think that like in the same way that we've talked about the famous story of how you know, navies that had oranges were allowed to, you know, not get scurvy because they were able to have the fresh produce and that sort of thing, and how our ability to process alcohol allowed us to also kind of take these long journeys of movement across the globe and various other things. It's just interesting how impactful these substances are from their humble beginnings, maybe even as just a deliriant or some sort of like entertaining substance. You know what I mean? I just find that kind of artistic and beautiful.
It is nature is beautiful in that way, I think, in a sense. Eric I asked, Jack Greenstock, you ever have a plant that doesn't seem to want to finish? Any ideas? Personally, no, I have not. I do have ideas though. I've had several growers at this point, probably 10, that have asked me the same question in the past in DMs. Usually they're sending me a photo. They're like, this is 11 weeks, 12 weeks, 13 weeks, and it's still throwing white pistils, stigma, whatever you want to call them. It's still looking like it's almost like producing more flower and it's just going to keep going and going forever. I would usually ask questions like, is the temperature really high? Is it super hot in there? How's the environment? So make sure the environment's dialed in. But if it is dialed in, which I'll assume that it is, it just might be a genetic that is really long flowering. I would go from your 12-12, which you're likely running, to an 11-13 for at least a week or two. Then try dialing that back. If it doesn't work, all the way down to 10 on and 14 off. That's the most extreme I've ever cut anybody back to. But they're like, this thing's never going to finish. And I had them go 10 hours on, 14 hours off. And all those white hairs started turning and the buds started filling out. And it stopped like kind of like vegging almost in flower. It was like almost looked like it was re-vegging, but flowering still. And just like once we went 10-14, it finally finished. So those would be my tips. And I'm curious if anybody else on the panel has thoughts for Eric I, because I just saw another question. I'm going to go grab from the chat.
No, that's what I would do. But sometimes some of them would just keep throwing off white hairs, you know, forever, I would say.
Yeah. So I would ask questions like, so for me, I'm looking at like 5 different things or so to make a decision on whether it's time to harvest or not. So if one of those things doesn't check the box, it doesn't mean I'm not going to harvest. You know what I mean? For me, I need like, if it's checking about 4 of those boxes, I'll harvest that bitch. But, you know, so white hairs, I've harvested plants with white hairs before and they were narcotic. So, you know, some plants will just keep on going like what you guys said, but, I would make sure that some of the, you know, as long as like everything else was right, like the plant was senesced, like it's showing you some colors and you got, especially if you're getting yellowing, in your fan leaves, that's no big deal. But if you're getting yellowing in your sugar leaves and that's starting to creep towards your bud, that's going to be an issue, especially for at least bag appeal. And then, what else? How much is it drinking? If you're watering it and normally it's dry in a day or two and it's still on that schedule, then, you know, maybe it is still wanting to grow. But if you're watering it and it's not wanting to drink for another 2-3 days, yeah, she's probably pretty close to being done. I mean, there's all these little other clues that if that's everything else is telling me that it's ready to harvest and there's just one thing telling me it's not ready, I'm going to ignore that one thing.
It's amazing the white hairs being narcotic. I had Platinum Yeti next to Sour 76, and the Sour 76 was like done for like 2, maybe 3 weeks before the Platinum Yeti. But I was at the point where I'm like, I'm always harvesting the whole entire tent at the same time. Like that's how I was in my operation at that point. So once I started seeing some purple in the Platinum Yeti, even though it still had all white hairs, when I chopped it, just through the dry phase, those white hairs turned to orange. And that bud was, to this day, still some of the most narcotic, sit you on the couch. You cannot get up to do anything but I ever smoked. And it had white hairs all over it when I chopped. So I was like, oh, like, and it was stretchy too, and it had thin fucking sativa leaves. So it broke all the stereotypes for me in one grow. I was like, Jesus, like this, all these lessons you learn on certain grow websites, they don't necessarily always apply. So you have to grow the genetics, smoke it, and have the experience yourself, because everybody's endocannabinoid system is so different. With that said, Spartan Grown and your endocannabinoid system is going to keep getting charged up at the Michigan Bros Grow Show in about 15 minutes. Before that, I'll let you go and refill your trays, check on the dogs, and get yourself something to drink. So any final thoughts and shout outs before you go?
I just want to, shout out to everybody on the panel and in chat, man. That's why I come back, and this, man, I really do this shit than watch TV, do any of that other shit, man. This is real life shit, not some fucking bullshit escape reality stuff. So I appreciate each and every one of you. I almost fucked that up. Keep growing, everybody. Growers love, and fuck the MCMA. See you guys.
Peace out, Spartan.
I love all Kazoo Cush's artwork that he's been doing. Fuck MCMA and
Oh,
Medical
yes.
Mondays has been killing
Shout
it
out
too.
Kazoo, man. He's killing it.
Later, man.
People. Cheers to Michigan, Spartan Grown. Have a great night. That's at Spartan Grown on Instagram. You can email at spartangrown@gmail.com. And that's the way to reach out to him. He's a cool dude. He's killing it up there in Michigan. He works at Mitten Canico as well. They are doing big things. I can't wait to see them on Canna Cribs whenever that drops. Just awesome dude. Always happy to have him. Brings a lot of positivity and knowledge to the community. So we're always grateful to have him here. I know the Michigan Bros Grow Show are as well. And we're coming into that last 15 minutes. And we could talk a little bit about maybe Noah and the American one's seed popping, cloning, and early veg strategies before we give Mathew a second to give us an IPM update, and we'll tie it up and call it a night.
Okay, so seed popping, cloning, and early veg stage.
Yeah, just general thoughts on those. Do you what's your seed popping strategy if you do pop seeds, and then cloning idea, and then what are your parameters you like to set for your veg room and veg space if possible?
Well, you never have enough. You think you don't need as much, but you always need more. I like to make sure that my if I'm gonna use an arrow cloner, or if I'm just gonna use a typical dome cloner, that it's very clean every single time. I want to make sure my scissors or my razor blade, if the razor blade, I'm gonna use a brand new one. If it's scissors, I want to make sure that they're dipped in like 99% or the best lemon alcohol you can get. I always tell everybody, if you can, there's legal perimeters, but if you want 2 clones, make 3. That way you can pick, if one dies, you're good. You can throw one away. I like to, if I can, even make like, I'll put 3 in. And then if I want even just one, as soon as I see that like 2 of them are rooted, whatever one rooted first that looks the healthiest, I'll just take the other ones out right away and do that. There's a lot of different strategies. I like to go from an arrow cloner. I like to go right into a Dixie cup and let that get established for maybe 2 weeks, maybe even 3 weeks. Just depends on where I'm at in my back log on my stage. That way I can get that plant established, and then I can transplant it into some bigger pots. And that's pretty much what I do. Seed popping, I'm not that's not really my forte. I haven't got a lot of experience with it, but the cloning and the veg stage is definitely something. You want to make sure that you're not giving your plants early in veg, if any, newts. Very, very diluted. It's very easy to burn them. So that's probably the stuff I would do.
Great tips. The American one, since he didn't really touch on the seed popping, what are your strategies for popping seeds? And then maybe you could touch on cloning and your veg parameters.
Well, I've been trying a little everything with the seeds, but I think that I've been settling on putting them in a Ziploc baggie with a paper towel, and then putting them so the bag is like up and down, like either thumbtacking it to the at the top on a thumb board or something, and then letting so that the roots won't grow into the paper towel, they'll go straight down. I know someone who puts it on a cookie tray and puts wet paper towels on a cookie tray, and then has like books and slants the cookie tray. It's like a 70-degree angle or whatever, and he has no problem either. But I've noticed recently that the ones that I started that I like get a longer root top. When I transplanted them, they were fine, and a couple of the ones that just had a nub coming out, they never came up at all. And so I think I'm gonna start attempting that maneuver. And the cuttings, I've been starting them in solo cups lately, and I go from a solo cup to a 1 gallon to at least a 5 gallon, but I think I'm just going to skip to the 7 gallons. And yeah, that's pretty much my early veg. I would say if you get a good spot where your clones are going good and taken, just don't move it and just do what you're doing there, you know, because I've moved them, and yeah, I've had struggles with cloning sometimes.
I think everybody has, if they're being honest, man. At one point or another, cloning has
For
been
sure.
a bitch for everybody. They've had a run that didn't go for them, and it was a bummer, and they lost stuff that they wanted to keep
Oh, and
or didn't get enough.
why, yeah, always cut more than you need. This way, if you know, especially if it's important to you, then take more than you need, and then yeah, your odds will be better.
At least 2 if you really want to keep it. That's my thought, is never have just one. If you really, really love it, have at least 2 copies, and maybe have it backed up somewhere else if you have a trustworthy friend. But if not, maybe learn how to tissue culture. That's a cool thing to do, but probably unattainable for certain people. I definitely want to learn myself. I'm still studying. I haven't gotten the things yet because personally, I don't take tons of clones. I like popping seeds. I like growing new stuff each time and seeing the different varieties that are out there, and then sometimes mixing them together and breeding them up and making my own seed. But I want to shout out Johnny. Johnny Candiseed went to Home Depot, got himself a bag of sand for like $5, put it in a plastic tray. He takes his cuts with just water. I think he adds aloe to the water. To be fair, he does add just a little bit of fanciness to it, but I don't think it would need the aloe water. He wet the sand, stuck the clones in there, 100% have rooted every single time. And he's done it like 20 plus clones, like 3 or 4 runs, 5. And they've rooted it sometimes less than a week. And they're really strong roots. Like if he lets them go 2 weeks, they're grown so much through the sand that he has to like break them apart with a spoon. So I hadn't seen that. I guess it's a common practice in citrus nurseries for how they clone or something. Or he saw it in some other gardening channel and he's like, I'll try that with my cannabis. And it worked. So cheers to Johnny. Johnny Candiseed for that. That's a cool technique. Mathew, have you seen any good IPM questions that you want to touch on the recording? Because I know I've seen you answer some stuff in the chat.
Yeah, I wanted to just get some of those in the text and maybe give like just a general. I was already starting to do that here, but I'll do it verbally as well. Just a little update. I think it's most helpful to give people an idea of like where some pests I'm seeing are becoming more common, but I'm getting asked about a lot more, just as sort of a general primer. So I just had somebody actually who works for the USDA reach out to me telling me that they saw my video about beet curly top virus, and they were commenting that although it seems to be very much more common in Colorado and in Arizona and Nevada, it is also becoming more common in California, which is no surprise because it does already exist in many parts of the US and globally. So beet curly top virus, I want to just touch on because I have a video on it that shows early and late symptoms on my YouTube channel. And it's vectored by the beet leafhopper. And it only has to feed once or twice, a few times, to transfer the virus. And then you are pretty much in great trouble. Because as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, there's really no conventional way of dealing with this virus and other viruses. So you should really be careful because the beet leafhopper feeds on a lot of different plants, and the virus can be asymptomatic in other plants. So you might have no idea that a plant next to your cannabis plants, especially in a home grow, might have BCTV, and then a beet leafhopper comes around, trundles up, drinks up the BCTV, and then transfers it to your plants, and you had no idea. So just be very vigilant about that. Other things that I'm seeing a lot of is people are asking me about damage that I associate with Pseudomonas cannabina, which is a bacterial pathogen. That's a foliar pathogen that you see on your leaves. So look up, and I put up the names in the chat so you can look those up. Septoria is also a fungal pathogen in the foliage that people are asking me about a lot more as well. And of course, moving on to insects, something that people see a lot more lately is the Eurasian hemp borer. Fall armory worm is a pretty impressive problem currently in a lot of places, cannabis and otherwise. And the always infamous corn earworm, Helicoverpacea. So those 3 moths, if you haven't already dealt with them, you should definitely find ways of defeating them before they become a threat. And my main way of doing that I suggest is physical barriers, whether they're solid or permeable like mesh screen, can be really helpful indoor and outdoor.
it's still underutilized. I follow a lot of growers and I see a lot of them not using it. The mesh screen. It's like it's so rare that I see it. And I just don't quite understand why, but it maybe is the expense or the installation, the actual physical process of putting it up. But it seems like it'll block a lot of people's problems. If and when I'm moving up to a larger scale, I plan to implement that. But it seems like I'm not seeing it very much. And I'm just curious, is that your kind of experience as well? People are not tending to spring for the extra protection.
Yeah, people tend to not be that way. I'm not trying to be judgmental about it. I do think that it's understandable. People are just trying to see, especially if they're doing it themselves. Man, do I really want to like kind of do this complicated thing where I have to put a sheet over or maybe make a more permanent structure? And sometimes people are growing in a situation where it's not very conducive, or it might not be copacetic with their people that they're living with or their neighbors. It might be too much of a red flag perhaps. And I think also mesh screens tend to make things look kind of ugly to a lot of people, which is totally fair, especially like in outdoor settings. But if you're really worried about the pests, I would highly emphasize that.
To me, it's just if you want consistent crops and you want to give yourself the best likelihood of success long term, whether it's the beet leaf hopper or some other pest, you can prevent so much of it just by implementing this one-time cost for the most part. I mean, it might have to be patched up here and there or replaced every so many years, but it'll, in my opinion, reduce a lot of people's headaches in cultivation, and they'll sort of get used to the look after probably a week, and it'll basically save them money on other forms of IPM, ideally, because they won't necessarily need to spray as harmful or as noxious or as a high volume of other products that they might if they didn't implement the screen. So definitely, I just want to continue to push it and get that idea out there to people, even on a small scale. It's implementable in your home grow over like windows or whatever, just like the grow room exhaust window. If you have a tent or a small grow space, it's something to consider. I've seen people actually on the smaller size take their intake fans through a box that has a good level of filtration. And I appreciate that for a number of reasons. I think it's a great strategy. But with that being said, I'm going to pass it over to Noah the Grower to give his final thoughts and shout outs before we sign out.
Hey, thanks, man. I had a good time, and I've been really busy, so I haven't really posted any of some of my new stuff. I got in my room. I got some really good looking stuff. I'm going to be posting on Instagram here coming up. But yeah, I'm over there at Noah the Grower with 2 E's if you want to find me. And I'm here on Growing with my fellow growers, most weeks. And yeah, thanks a lot, Jack. I'll see you guys all next week.
Thank you as always for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. And I look forward to seeing some of the new stuff in your room, because you consistently have put out beautiful looking buds, grow after grow. And I respect anybody who has the dedication to keep doing it year after year and putting out the medicine for themselves and others. So thanks again for joining us, Noah. Next up, we have the American one.
Jack, as always, thanks for hosting the show, and shout out to Noah the Grower and Mathew and Kyle, Predicated Breeding, and in absence of Brandon Rust and Dr. MJ. It's good to be here this week, and shout out to everyone in chat. I'm the American one, and yeah, everyone have a great week.
Thanks again for joining us. Always a pleasure to have you. You were the first one here this week on the Zoom call. It always makes me a little more at ease when somebody shows up before 59, like the minute before the show, and a few people did this week, which is always nice. And not to say that you need to be here early or anything. I always appreciate anybody showing up at any time, early, late, on time, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I always appreciate everybody on the panel and the time that they give. Speaking of which, Mathew Gates, do you have any final thoughts and shout outs?
It's cliche, but I really appreciated the chat interactions. I always do. I always like seeing the similar names and also the new names and all the good questions. It shows that people are being proactive, and I like that. So if you want to be proactive, you can find my content about pests and plant health in 2 or 3 general areas. The first one is my Twitter account at SyncAngel. You can also find me retweeting a bunch of scientists in soil microbiology and ecology and all these other sorts of really important facets of science related to plant health. You can find me on Instagram, same name, at SyncAngel, where I post a lot of the similar content and also my own content, which I share from my primary account, which is my YouTube channel is Zenthanol, which if you want to support, you can find my Patreon account where I have a Discord channel that I help people with regards to that. And if you're interested in getting some help kind of casually in that way, you can head on down to the Patreon and also my YouTube channel.
Thank you as always for joining us, and make sure to support Matthew and the rest of the panel. I also want to echo what the American one said. Shout out to Predicative Breeding, who was with us earlier. He left about the hour mark, and Brandon Rust, who was not with us this week, as well as Dr. MJ, who's in the middle of moving. Cheers to both of them, and Aaron the Grower
And Aaron,
as well.
yeah, I forgot
who
Aaron.
Is,
I was gonna say that.
he's actually like not battling the fire, but he's prepping his property by spraying down water in the most dry areas. And this is, in his words, I believe, not his first rodeo or his first fire. So he's been up there for years, and they've actually seen a few come close to them before. I know last year it hit earlier in the crop, but they were able to get through their harvest this year, thankfully, and hopefully they'll be able to get out of there safely, because I know they're on their way to Oklahoma soon with teaming up with Kyle, Predicated Breeding. So thoughts and prayers go out to Aaron, the grower, great dude, awesome grower, and normal panel member. Hopefully he'll be back with us soon. But with that being said, I'm Jack Greenstock, your host. You can find me at Jack Greenstock on Instagram primarily. And I'm also Jack_Greenstock on Twitter. If you want to email me, jackgreenstock47@gmail.com. And if you want a copy of my book, 50 Strains of Green, you can go to 50strains.com. 50 Strains of Purple is in the works. I've chosen all 50 strains. I'm gathering the photos, and I'm also typing up all the reports and things like that. So it's a fun process. I really appreciate everybody's support in getting the first copy and second edition of the book. And this is awesome community. So look forward to seeing you all next week. Peace and love. Growers love. Signing out. Catch you next week.
Happy growing, everybody.